Hi, I'm Sydney Jones, and I'm here to talk to you about how to use CTI in various size information security teams, from that one person doing InfoSec to 10 plus people on a CTI team. So here's what we'll be covering. I just wanted to get through, I've been talking to other speakers here today in the past and preparing for the summit on different topics that are presented at various intelligence summits, and nobody's really talking about how to use CTI in your various size teams. We do a lot of discussions on how to make and tailor your products for your customers, but we're not talking about how to tailor your actual team. So here's what we'll be covering. A bit about myself. So I lead the CTI team at BNP Paribas here in the US. Prior to that, I led a CTI program in another large bank and also in an exchange. I also developed an external engagement program at my last firm. And I have several years in the Department of Defense, again, as a CTI analyst and doing intelligence policy advice. I also am in various committees within the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center and co-chair of the Critical Infrastructure Subcommittee at the Intelligence and National Security Alliance. And outside of all of that, I find time to have fun. So I am also an avid sailor and dancer. So let's start off with a couple of questions. I asked them to raise the lights on this slide. How many of you think that any IT department needs an intelligence function? Not as many as I thought. Okay, I think they do. But I also have been an intelligence professional most of my career. So I think it's really in how it's used that is the best thing. I don't think we all need to be writing those long form intelligence reports that a lot of speakers thought was what an intelligence function did yesterday. I think we can do a little bit more of information sharing within your company. And then the last couple of questions I have, and then you can bring lights back down. How many of you have CTI as one of the many functions you're responsible for? Okay, about 5%. How many of you have been that one person doing CTI, the only person? Okay, less than 5%. Okay, that's good. That I guess more of you have actually done CTI on a larger team. So we'll be covering, again, like I said, from that one person, kind of MacGyvering information security, making sure that the networks are up. Then going through like a small or medium-sized CTI team, and then up to that larger CTI team of like 10 plus people. I will be kind of building upon each team, so please don't kind of tune out. If you are in a bigger team, don't wait till the end to listen. And then if you are in a smaller team, don't forget about what's coming up, just because this will give you some advice on how you can mature your program and kind of ask for more resources. You'll have the ability to tell them, hey, this is what I can provide you in return for those resources. And that's it for my poll the audience question. Okay, so what about that one person doing information security? My biggest advice that I will stop here is to be a part of your sector's information sharing and analysis center or analysis organization, your ISAC and ISAO. It's a big thing here within the US, and I've noticed that we have a lot of people from other countries and probably online. They do have similar programs outside of the US as well. Freddie spoke yesterday from the Nordic Financial CERT, or CERT, I think is what it is. Freddie had a talk yesterday, so go look for that. There's also FSISAC is global. There's a group in Israel as well, and I'm sure there's others that I am not aware of. So within the US, there are 25 different ISACs and ISAOs that are listed on the National Council of ISACs website. So your sector is probably a part of one. What they do is they can give you a lot of information specific to your sector. So you're not going to be inundated with all of this information that's out there about all the threats that are going on globally. It's kind of narrowing it down for you. And then also within your sector, they're going to have those smaller groups. So I would suggest that you reach out to the membership director or whoever your account representative is for that ISAC and ask them, hey, this is my niche business within my sector, and that's what I'm trying to find out more about. Within finance, which is where I have spent a good chunk of my career, the FSISAC has groups devoted to the broker-dealers, insurance companies, exchanges, and then any other kind of smaller subsets. And then for those of you who might not know, not everyone in finance actually cares about credit card fraud, which for me is kind of a blessing. It gives me a little bit more time to focus in on other threats that I am actually concerned about. So it's within these groups that we can kind of find out a little bit more information. And in my last company, I actually started a smaller group devoted to the market segment. So we were more concerned about our smaller clients and how they could get information specific to their firms and their threats. We thought if we could help protect them and get them kind of talking with each other about threats that they're seeing, it would actually protect the market overall and keep the sector as a whole, or at least hopefully as a whole, more secure from those threats. Separately, within these ISACs, they also have regional focused groups. So it's not specific to your actual smaller subsector, but it can be based on where you are located geographically. So this is instead of just going to their annual summit once a year, seeing everybody and getting, a lot of fun out of it, you're actually meeting up quarterly, hopefully, or more often, and getting to meet the peers within your geographic area. So you can have those conversations, those smaller groups, which is actually really great. So that's kind of a lot about the ISAC. I really like the ISAC. Some people may not, but I think it's a good place to start. And then after that, I would say even beyond the US, you can look at the CISA vulnerability catalog. They actually post a lot of updates on vulnerabilities that are actively being exploited, and they update it on their website, which I actually made sure to put on the screen, which I hope is big enough for you guys to read. So that way, if you're that one person caring about literally everything going on in your company, you can kind of prioritize your patching cycle based on what's actively being exploited. They will actually also prepare monthly summaries dependent on your sector and provide those as well, saying, hey, within your sector in the past month, we've noticed that even older vulnerabilities are being exploited. So you can go back and make sure that your patching is up to date if needed. And with all of this information, that's a lot to come through. So you may want to talk to your firm about using either a SIEM or a TIP. Not my preference at this size team, but it's a lot for one person to handle. So if you have the budget, it's something you can consider. As far as outputs, I really don't think you're going to have time for any intelligence outputs. You already have a lot going on. So just kind of help this or use this information to help inform your processes you already have in place. So for a smaller information security team, so a little bit bigger than one person, but still not that large, kind of pay attention to what we just talked about, but another way that you can kind of help with that information and any additional information you're looking at externally is an open source aggregator. So I've been using the free version of Feedly. I know free tools are popular here. Feedly does have a paid version, but I've been using the free one for I don't know how many years at this point. I am actually putting in the CISA information that we just talked about, as well as some FBI pins, flashes. In the financial sector, we get FINRA notices about phishing campaigns that are ongoing. I'll have that in there. And any security blogs that I'm following, Proofpoint just gave a talk listing multiple different blogs that they are citing. So that's another thing that you can add into your Feedly or any other aggregator you choose to use, and as well as any news sources that you like. And I would suggest that you kind of keep tweaking this as it's needed. If you're interested in a paid version, Feedly has a paid version, Data Miner and Sprinkler are other options as well. And for my Twitter users, if you still enjoy Twitter, I think TweetDeck is still available. So don't quote me on that, but I hope it is. And then some things you can also monitor for are data and credential leaks. For this, you can either use a paid vendor, or you can also check, have I been pwned or breach sense to see if your information's been out there. What else do I have on here? And then OSINT frameworks. I learned this in my OSINT class, VSANs. They have so many things on that website that they actually update. So not only just for this slide as well, but future slides, that's a good resource to go back and look at. And again, still no additional outputs that I'm asking you guys to do or even try to do, because you're still focused on that broader information security mission. You're really just going to be looking to monitor and detect anything that you can. Okay, so we're at a CTI conference. When are we going to talk about CTI teams? So this is the one I wanted to start with. So a small team of 1 to 3 analysts. There's a lot of external information that I've just covered, but I really think that this is when you can start focusing on your internal telemetry and tying in all of that external information to what's internal. This would mean your SOC data or any other logs that you have access to. And through this, you can start using the ISAC information about phishing campaigns or malware hits occurring in your sector, comparing it to see if you're having similar issues going on at your firm. This is also when a tip would actually come in quite handy because you can tie in that external data to your internal data. And then if you're looking to do malware analysis, we talked about malware analysis yesterday. A couple of tools would be abuse.ch, virus total, and hybrid analysis. I also put on here CCERT gadgets. It was on the OSINT framework site, so that's another resource you could use. For your focus here, it's going to be on that operational lens, and you're talking about tactical, operational, and strategic. And your outputs, I really want you to start with those intelligence requirements that we've talked about throughout this conference. An example that I like to start off with as a big intelligence requirement, you're only going to have like 4 to 8 overarching ones. If you have more than that, it's going to be way too many for you to think about. So a big one that I always start with when I go to a new team is, hey, are we looking at information related to a campaign targeting us or a peer that's very similar to us? That should be your main goal. What are your crown jewels and what are the threats that are trying to get to that? So that's my advice in regards to intel requirements. And then you're going to use those intel requirements to create some type of reporting or information that you're sharing with other teams. So I give you some advice here for working with your incident response team. You're going to look through those phishing metrics. You're going to look through the phishing campaigns that are going on within your ISAC channels, kind of comparing, contrasting, seeing if you're seeing similar hits. Don't just be like, hey, we saw this in FSISAC. Here you go, SOC. Go see if we have it. You can actually go look for that. And then if you get a hit, you can pass it on to the SOC for them to do additional research. And if there are no hits, you can just put it in your tip or your SIEM, and then it'll notify you if you have something in the future. For your vulnerability management team, again, it goes back to that CISO alerts or any other reporting that you're using for vulnerabilities. You want to let them know, hey, we saw this vulnerability that's being patched, but it's actually actively being exploited in our sector. Maybe that's the one that you guys want to patch first. Then wanted to talk about exercises and red teaming activities. A lot of people have a hard time understanding or thinking through what should the red team look to exercise or implement so you can provide the real world intelligence about what's been going on in the past few months, past week, past year, depending on how often they do those exercises. So an example that came out last week is malware now being delivered via OneNote attachments. So that's something you may want to see if your red team could exercise. And then if that's not enough, if you have time, you can do some weekly reports. Some teams of this size do weekly reporting to their staff. It can be either technical or operational reporting lines that you're reporting this to. So this would be external intelligence that you're seeing and trying to tie that back to your intelligence requirements. I'm not saying do a summary of news articles. Please do not do that. Otherwise, they're going to think that's all you do. So you're actually wanting to tie the external intelligence back to your firm. So where's your firm operating? Where are they looking to expand their business to? Who are their clients? Are they operating in a high-risk operational area? What are the threats for that? What are the threat actors targeting your sector this week? That type of thing. For a mid-size CTI team, this is actually when you can start adding in that strategic focus and focus on all 3 aspects of intelligence that we've talked about. And your analysts can start kind of deciding which one they might like more interesting. I'm a strategic analyst, but I love my tactical analysts because they love the malware. And so some things that you can look for as far as inputs. If you have the budget, and I'm assuming if you have a team this size, you have a little bit more budget, I would suggest adding in a dark web monitoring vendor so they can start looking on the dark web, seeing if there's anything talking about threat actors wanting to target you specifically or your type of firm, so you don't have to go out there. Nation state or espionage focused vendor is also really helpful at this point. And then if you don't have that money, at least for the nation state vendors, a lot of them will provide blog updates and security blog updates, as we mentioned earlier, on the larger activities that they're seeing. So you can at least kind of add that into what you're wanting to report back to the firm. If you want a more powerful OSINT aggregator, like I mentioned earlier, this is another time you could probably start adding that in, since you're going to have enough analysts focusing on that. And then also a domain monitoring tool. So this is when you're trying to look back through to see if anyone's kind of doing weird things to your domains, but then also when you're trying to figure out, hey, we saw this happening from such and such domain, where does that tie back into infrastructure-wise? As far as outputs, you can do a lot more on the sector trends, threats that you're seeing sector-wide, geopolitical events and how that could impact your business line or your bottom dollar, and business strategy. Are you looking to operate in a new location? Are you looking to add in a new line of business in finance? A lot of people want to add in crypto for some reason. Don't do it. Please don't. You can also do some products through your physical security and business continuity teams as well. So this would be, are there cyber threats that could actually happen at the same time as a physical disruption to one of your locations? Or again, you are looking to expand into a high-risk operational area. What are the cyber threats involved in doing that? And then my personal favorite you could start trying to do here is external partnerships. This would just be an additional duty if someone has some time, maybe one or two analysts. And what do I mean by external partnerships? I'm a big proponent of having relationships with your local law enforcement and government entities prior to an incident. So I know that a lot of people aren't really sure where to start, but it's a good thing to kind of get to know who those people are. You can also start building more one-on-one trusted relationships within your sector. So again, like I said, do this prior to an incident. You don't want to be dealing with a ransomware attack and trying to figure out who to call. You want to already know who they are. Be like, hey, dude, yeah, it was great seeing you last week. By the way, I need your help. You want to have that relationship already. And it's also good use for intelligence collection because you already have those relationships and someone might tell you, hey, we're seeing XYZ activity before they even put it in ISAC. Then for a larger team of analysts coming from the government and into a large multinational bank, I kind of used to think this is what a CTI team was. I've learned over the years, this is not a CTI team in most places. It is usually, the Fortune 100 banks or 100 companies that, or the government or security vendors that have the size team. But if you are fortunate enough, enough to work for one of them, this is some advice for your size team. Again, I'm assuming at this point, you're going to have a lot of budget because you're going to have this many people. So you're going to look at some specialized vendors. And what do I mean by specialized? So some firms are actually building specific teams for specific threats. And that's going beyond your strategic threats. They're looking at, hey, we've seen a lot in the supply chain sector. We're really concerned about that. So let's look for some vendors that can help us explore that option. Or in the cryptocurrency world or blockchain, chain analysis is really great and useful for people who are concerned about that. You can also double up on your vendors. So if you have a specific region that you're focused on, some vendors are better at focusing on certain regions. So you can add in a vendor that's focusing on that. Some firms of this size are also very concerned about brand protection. And what do I mean by that? You're concerned about how your brand is seen online, or if there are scams implicating your brand without your permission. So you're looking for tools that will be monitoring for new domains that pop up, impersonating your brand, social media accounts that are impersonating your brand, or possibly your C-suite. And I'm not just talking about deep fakes. And then when we get into your outputs, it's still going to be the same reporting lines, but you're going to add in a little bit more because you're going to have those more niche teams. So your supply chain cell that some firms have, you're going to be working with your third-party risk management team as an example, and the relationship managers for those vendors. You're going to be talking to them regularly, talking to them about the threats you're seeing, all these data breaches that keep happening to our vendors these days. I don't know how many I've seen in the FSI tech realm this month. It's been a lot of just vendors that we were concerned about. And then, they're going to build those reporting lines specifically for that. And the other one I had was cryptocurrency, because again, I work in finance. There are cells that are actually very much concerned in the thefts of cryptocurrency and monitoring those threat actors on a daily basis. And then again, external engagement. I think at this point, you can actually have that one person who's focused on it, maybe two full time. And that's going beyond just the relationship with law enforcement. This is, building those relationships with the cross-sector engagements of, everyone is dependent on energy and telecommunications. I don't care what sector you're in, you're dependent on that for your business. So you're kind of building those relationships across your ISACs through the different cross ISAC channels. You're finding other information sharing groups that you can talk to. You're talking to academia, you're talking to other government sectors, you're talking beyond US government or your local government. So anyways, that can be a whole other talk in and of itself. So if you want to talk to me about external engagement, you can see me after. Okay, so I've given you a lot of information. Hopefully it was enough for you guys to absorb, but I want you to think of some questions before I show you a summary slide. Where are you now in regards to CTI? And where do you want to be? And how can you get there? So I hope that this talk gave you some ideas of how you can kind of mature your team. And some things that you can do to convince your management of why you need more resources, or when you get those resources that you'll be able to provide them better outputs. I had meant to tell you I was going to give you a summary slide of everything, but here's a summary slide of everything if you want to take a picture of this before the slides are up. And please don't do this all on your own. Okay. And with that, again, not malware.